Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Women Like Me Stories in Business. This is the podcast where we talk about the truth behind the story. I'm Julie Fairhurst, and today I have the absolute honor of speaking with one of our authors from our newest Women Like Me book, The Space Between Before and After. And that is the cover there. It is such a good book. Our conversation is going to be tender, but also powerful and unforgettable. My guest's story takes us into childhood, family fear, political unrest, secrecy, and survival. It's beautifully written, deeply human, and full of the kind of detail that does not just paint a picture, but it pulls you right into the room. It is such a good story. So please welcome Z Laguji. Laguji.
Salute.
Saloojee.
Saloojee.
Oh, sorry. Saloojee. Got it. Saloojee. Got it. Got it. Z, I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you for being
It's
here
an
with us.
it's an honor to be here, and I'm really excited to be doing this today and to be sharing, be have the opportunity to share my truth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Well, it
inviting me.
oh, you're so welcome. And it's such a fabulous story. And it's one of those stories that reminds people like we meet people day to day, go out through our lives, but we really don't know what's behind them, what
Mm.
stories they've dealt with or are dealing with, and yours is just one of those that I when I first read it, I went, "Holy smokes, that's quite the story." So let's get into it. Let's start first of all by just finding out why this story. So, what made you choose this particular story to write about?
Um, I think it was honestly, it was a little bit random in that when my father had passed away. My mom passed away in 2018. My father passed away on the same day a year later in 2019.
Wow.
And I think as a family, we were mourning and we were grieving and we were trying to console one another. And the boys, I've got three sons, and they were asking me, like, tell us about, like, how do you remember, they called my father Papa Joe.
Oh,
And so tell us stories about Papa Joe and tell us stories about Grandma, which was my mom. And what's your first, like, what's the one story that you could share that made you realize, like, what love meant? And whew, it was, I thought about it, and it was that story simply because of the overwhelming feeling that I recall as a child when I first saw my dad in that desert, leaning up against the rock with a cigarette in his hand, the khaki suit. Like it's embedded in my memory. It's such a core memory for me. And so when I told the story, I told it as an adult to my children. Like, oh, I remember it. It was just like it was verbatim. It was just like going through the motions of telling the story. Um, but I think what it did for me is it gave me afterwards when I went back and I was alone and I went back to revisit that story because as I was telling it, just as I'm telling it now, it was like there was this overwhelm that I pushed down. And I really wanted to see where that was coming from. Like why was I feeling so vulnerable?
hmm.
And so I revisited this story and I really went into the details of it as a child, and I wanted to remember it as a child because it was such a core memory for me. So
Wow.
it excavated all of this emotion, and really kind of changed it just changed something deep within me that you know something, but you don't realize it, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it
So you
does.
know that this happened, but you don't realize the impact it has
Yeah.
on our lives and how we carry ourselves and what we do in our work. Like everything, as a parent, as a mother, as a friend, everything it impacted.
Yeah.
And this story really did that. It showed me that.
Yeah. I love what you said in the beginning about, your, of course, not your parents passing, but you being able to give those stories to your sons. So they
Mm,
have that memory to because I think it's the same thing. Like I've noticed so much. I've written my personal story, and some of my family members have been like, "Well, I didn't even know about that."
right.
So I
Yeah.
think it's a good reminder that, is there stories that we should be sharing with our children and our loved ones that we hold on to, we love, we carry those deeply. So I love that you were able to share those with your boys. When you first began writing it, what emotions came up the most strongly for you?
Ooh, um, I think it was a balance between feeling and knowing how deeply loved I was,
Mm,
and feeling really abandoned at the same time. It was such a juxtaposition for me because the abandonment is something that I've always tossed away and hidden and not wanted to really see. But when I looked at that little girl inside of me, it was that feeling of like I'm being abandoned. I'm being left out. Why are they not here? And almost anger, like why is something else, anything else more important than being with me and raising me and taking care of me? And I think that the only way that I could forgive my parents was to recognize what it is that I needed to forgive.
yes, yes. Wow. Your story is so vivid. Um, when readers, I mean, I found this, and I'm sure others will when they read it. So readers can smell the food, feel the tension, and sense the fear in the room. So did those memories come back easily, or did they sort of arrive in pieces for you?
I think that it was a little bit of both. I think that there was just when I told the story, when I revisited the story, it was just an overwhelm. It was like a wave that, like a tsunami,
Yeah.
that just like, flooded me with emotion. And it was then about really trying to extract and really carefully understand the nuances of everything. And so I wouldn't say it was this flood of emotion that came back, but then it was like picking it apart and really like digging for what it is exactly and why was it this. And I remember I remember the emotion attached to these, very scary big soldiers, and my granny giving them something I loved, not understanding the depth of what she was doing at that time, but the emotion for myself was like, why is this happening? And
Yeah.
it was fear. That's what I was feeling. It was just that I didn't know how to recognize it at that time.
Well, you were so
And
young.
I was 7.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, being a child in the middle of very adult danger, at what point did your life, or did you begin to understand what was really happening around you? Was there a point where you started to actually realize what was going on?
Um, in this story in particular, I think I was always aware of the danger. There was always conversation about it. It was all around us. Like it's you were in a war-torn area that you lived, like I was in this bubble. Around me was war everywhere. There was, chaos all the time. There was the consciousness of knowing that you, as a brown skinned child, there were certain things that I couldn't do. And it wasn't only for me, it was for all brown people in South Africa at that time during apartheid. And so um, there's always a knowing, but it's in understanding that and how you live that every day, I think is
Mm.
what really came to fore for me. And I knew all the political songs. I knew the revolutionary songs. I witnessed so much of the struggles that people were facing around me, and even within our own families. My grandmother was always cooking food and taking it to the prisoners that were not actually prisoners. They were more hostages for standing up for something, and that kind of thing. So
Oh,
it was always something in the sphere of our reality.
wow.
um and I knew that it affected me specifically differently than it did other children because of my parents' political stance, and the
Hmm.
fact that they were exiled and couldn't come back into South Africa. And from the moment I landed in South Africa, when my granny came to Canada and got me and brought me to South Africa, and I haven't told those stories. There was chaos, there was mayhem, there was, this need to protect me from authorities at the time. So.
Wow. Wow. So your grandparents definitely come through your story extremely strongly. What would you want the readers to understand the most about them and the role that they played in your life?
Um, I think really that they were my protectors.
Mm,
They loved me unconditionally, like parents should be loving their children unconditionally. They filled in that gap that my parents couldn't. And they did it with such honor and with such authenticity and generosity. And I'm forever grateful and indebted to them for that.
yeah.
Um, and they taught me I mean, the work that I do now comes from my grandmother. It was, she raised me, she showed me the way, in a sense. And so they're still in my life in some,
Oh,
you know,
yes.
in many respects, in many
Yeah.
ways. And
Yeah.
to have people in your life that you can absolutely fall back on, and who are there as your pillars of strength. And they don't necessarily have to be your parents. They can be anyone,
Yes.
really.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
that we grow. I think we grow. We look for those gems in our lives, and sometimes they're there for a short period of time, and sometimes they're there for a longer period of time.
Yes.
But to have those and to be those now, like, I feel like that's what I need to be, is that maternal, that matriarch, that mother to whomever needs it.
Yeah. Wow. So there was so much tension in the border crossing scene. Oh my goodness. So looking back now, what does that moment mean to you as an adult?
Some not so nice things come up for me. Definitely the sense of being secretive, being almost to the point of deception, just for the sake of feeling that I need to do that to feel safe.
Yeah.
Um, Being, to a certain extent, hoardful of my food, because it was taken, even though it wasn't my food per se, it was to be shared.
Yes.
But the sense of, like, I need to keep my cupboards full, and I need to, like, and recognizing that has helped me to let go of that to a certain
Ah,
extent.
yeah.
um secrets
Yeah.
all the time, and just like constantly feeling like I need to protect myself, I need to hide, I need
Yeah.
to not show my voice and not show my face and not be present in myself, because I might put other people at danger,
Yeah.
including myself.
Yeah. See, because in that scene that you wrote about, you were awake, but you were told to pretend you were sleeping.
Yeah.
And why couldn't you have a passport? Was it because it was a Canadian passport? Why did you have to use a neighbor's passport, a neighbor child's passport?
Right. So, in order for me to own a South African passport, I didn't have a Canadian passport at the time that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure, but for me to have a South African, any form of South African identification would link me to my parents. And my parents were essentially
Ah,
wanted people,
right,
right? And
right.
it just added that component of danger that my grandparents weren't willing to risk.
Got it. Oh, I understand. Okay, okay, I got it. I understand now.
Yeah.
So, food, we'll go back to food. Food plays such a powerful role in your story. The samosas are not just food, they become part of survival, culture, comfort, and sacrifice. So, what does that
Mm.
symbolize for you now?
The samosa itself,
Well, I mean, we
or
talked a
food in
little bit about it, but what does that symbolize for you? You know, when you must never be able to eat a samosas without thinking of that,
general?
of the border crossing and
um,
the guards getting all your food.
I think that I've I've offered myself a different perspective now. I opened a restaurant a couple of years ago on the Sunshine Coast and then in Burnaby for a couple of years.
Oh.
And samosas was the thing that I focused on, and I made all different styles, all different flavors, and sold it to people that came in, but sold it wholesale to different South African stores. And I think it was about giving
Mm,
and feeding my own soul as I feed other people's soul, and changing the perspective of fear to one of love,
oh.
and creating something, because my granny, when she made those little samosas, and they were tiny, they were like just little, like 2 bites and they're done, with such dedication and love and detail, that I wanted to be able to honor that, rather
Mm,
than take the perspective of held on to fear and held on to something that was taken away from me. And so food, samosas in particular, when I make them now, I make them almost like as a meditation, I would
mm,
say. And I'm very, very slow in doing it. And when I fold them, there's a meditative component to it. And I love, my youngest son now helps me to make them, and I'm teaching him how to make them. And so we'll sit at the table with our cloths, and the same way my granny did, and we'll have music in the background, and we'll chat, and we'll spend like, an hour while we're folding each samosa, sitting and just organically conversing. And I
mm.
love that I've been able to change that perspective of what it
Yeah,
was and what it is today for me.
yeah, yeah. Wow, that's a beautiful vision. I love that you shared that with us. Thank you. So your
Thank
story
you.
carries themes of exile, separation, and identity. How did those early experiences shape your understanding of home and belonging?
Mm. I really struggled with it for a very, very long time. I never felt quite at home anywhere that I was. I think I always felt different from everyone, and
Hmm.
isolated from from who I was supposed to be, I guess. Um, because one foot was in South Africa, the other foot was always in Canada, and even as a young adult, I went back and forth between the two countries, lugging my kids and my husband along with me. I think we need to be in Canada now. Oh, I think we should go back to South Africa, and 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 not really feeling like any place was really home.
Hmm.
And then as an older adult, coming into a place of actually home is just where I am
Yeah,
right now, right where I am, and I make it with the people that are around me and my family. We make it home just by being who we are, and coming together when we can. And so again, it's perspective, right? And learning to change and be okay to pivot and change my own perspective that I grew up with, I think has just been monumental in my life today.
yeah. Well, that kind of leads into my next question. So, how have those early experiences shaped the woman that you've become?
Hmm. I mean, it's been a journey. It's been quite a journey, and it's been really sometimes harder than other times. Relationships that I had with my parents when they were alive were, um, yeah, they were kind of all over the place. You know, we'd go from ebbs and flows of just real tension, to bonding and love and just being there for each other. And we've always, it was a difficult journey. It's been a really, really difficult journey, not only in my relationships with my parents, but just my relationships in general as a person. I think I had to go through these phases of being just this really closed up person. And also the things that happened to me growing up in a place like South Africa that people weren't there to protect me in.
Mm,
And I didn't speak about that in that particular story, but there are many other stories, that that fear of authority, um, was really, really deeply rooted from so many core memories of authority overstepping the bounds,
mm,
and witnessing that not only within myself, but witnessing that with very, very close family members. Um, seeing my grandfather being arrested, seeing my grandmother beat, seeing, just those kinds of continuous things. And so really having to work through it,
yeah,
and sh- come out and share it within myself first, and
yes,
acknowledge
yeah,
the hurt,
yeah,
acknowledge the rage, acknowledge the silence, all of that.
yeah,
Has it's a continuous
mm,
journey. It's still
yeah,
becoming.
yes, yes, for sure. The moment you first saw your father again, that was an incredibly emotional part of your story. So, what was it like to write that scene? Was that hard for you
Honestly,
or?
it it just, every time I wrote it, it brought me to tears. Every time I read it, when I
Mm,
wrote it and I recognized that true emotion, it it sent me to the floor in tears.
yeah, wow,
It's yeah,
yeah,
it was very emotional,
yeah.
very,
Well,
very emotional.
well, what do you remember most deeply about that reunion? Because it wasn't very long. You weren't there for very long because there was an emergency. You had to get out of there. But
Yeah.
what do you remember most deeply about that?
The memory that I most remember is that moment I saw my father.
Yeah,
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 it had been 3 years, and 3 years in a child's life is like a lifetime, right? We don't have the same perception of time that
no,
adults do. And it just, and then there was always taunting and teasing at school. Oh, your parents are dead, and your grandparents are just protecting you. And so always having to like hear these things, and push away the feelings as a child, to just hide them constantly. And then coming to that moment of seeing my dad and seeing and realizing that it was actually him in the flesh was just, oh, it was just amazing. I
wow,
don't even have I don't have the eloquence to speak it. I
yeah,
don't know how to describe that
yeah,
overwhelming joy
yeah, yeah,
that that moment gave me.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, very shortly after that, there was a heartbreaking moment of separation again. So, when you wrote that, did anything new surface for you?
Oh, um, definitely, again, that feeling of, why is this happening? Why are you abandoning me?
Mm,
Because I remember my grandfather literally ripping me off of my dad. Like, I remember stepping on his toes, like standing on his feet and like holding him around his legs and saying, no, like, I'm coming with you, you can't leave me again. And then my grandfather like pulling me away from that, and just I think it was the feeling of not only abandonment, but um, a sense of complete loss of control, like a disempowerment within that little girl in me, where I couldn't control the narrative. There was nothing I could do. Like it was beyond my control.
It must have been so overwhelmingly confusing for you as a young child.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I guess it was confusing. Again, there were elements that I did understand.
Yeah,
Again, from a 7-year-old child's perspective, it's a very different kind of understanding, and it was very confusing in that respect.
yeah,
But I knew who my parents were. I knew the work that they did, and I knew the consequences of the work. So there was this reality check that was always there.
mm,
And as a child, the only way that I could really almost survive the separation, the continuous confusion, and the continuous violence that was around me was to remind myself of that reality check and then concede to that
mhm.
rather than focus on what it made me feel like. And so constantly just pushing my emotions in, down, 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 trying to figure out like how do I contain all this stuff? And it was
Yeah,
about just staying in my head and focusing on the reality
yeah.
to get through it.
And so what did you think? Did you realize the serious danger when I think I was it the next day you found out that the building had been bombed?
Oh, it was that same day,
Oh,
like
the
when my
same day.
grandfather drove us out of there, within 2 hours, that house was bombed.
Wow.
And if my grandfather had not recognized the man in there, everybody in there would have been dead.
Wow.
Fortunately, everyone scattered and got out, and they probably had, contingency plans in place, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yeah.
And I actually, as a child, I didn't know that.
Mm.
I learned that speaking to my dad many, many moons later.
Ah,
Him and I talking one morning over a cup of coffee, um, like probably maybe 2 years before he passed away, and me telling him like I remember that feeling, and like really just coming from that place of expression. And he said, Z, do you know what happened after that? And I said, no.
oh,
And so that piece of that was the missing piece of the puzzle for me, in a sense, right?
oh,
As an adult, being able to say, whoa, wait a minute, like what just happened? Like, what is this? This is new information. Like, this is
yeah.
like, I think I was really, really, I mean, as a child, I was furious with my grandparents, especially my grandfather. And I was his little pet. And I didn't speak to him for like days, or I don't know how long it was, but I was like really angry with him. And I was so hurt that he
Mm.
had that he had done that,
Yeah.
because I didn't understand, and I didn't have the end result of why he did that until I
Yeah.
was a fully fledged adult woman with 3 grown children.
Yeah. It just listening to you just again just really confirms how important it is to share these stories because there are bits and pieces that people don't understand, that they don't know. And
Yeah,
they go, they can go years
yeah,
with having issues or feeling unloved or empty or angry, and then but not get having that full story for their adult understanding.
absolutely. And I think it's important for me, the takeaway was about sharing, and sharing it with the people that created that are characters within that story, right?
Yes.
And getting closure. So I got closure from my dad for my grandfather and my grandmother and the situation and that anger and rage that I kept for all the years. I got closure from that by understanding the end of that story and
Mm,
why it was so important. And then revisiting it again after my father had passed away gave me a different closure, in that Um, I learned to I learned to understand why my parents really did this, and that it wasn't just because they were revolutionaries.
Yeah.
It was seeds they were planting for a future that they wouldn't see.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it wasn't for them, it was for
wow.
the generations to follow.
Wow. Wow.
So it was deeper
Yes.
and deeper than and bigger than just me and them and us. And I think that we have to be able to offer grace. And when we offer grace within ourselves and for ourselves, then we extract the goodness around us, even from the people that may have harmed us, and that we learn to
Mhm.
forgive them for really for ourselves
Yes.
first.
Yes. Yes. Oh, absolutely. So did you get the closure then from writing the story? Was there closure that came to you?
For that particular story, absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely, there was
Hmm.
heartache and rage and brokenness, and at the end of it, a realization that this is part of me.
Yes.
This experience is part of who I am today. And who I am today is definitely not a perfect person, but someone who stands in her truth
Mhm.
and who aims to always be authentic in herself. And so it gave me that kind of closure, and I'm so grateful
Yeah.
that I was able, because I remember when I was writing the story, and I remember sending you an email saying I can't do this, like
Yeah.
I can't, I just like it's just too much. And
Hmm.
you kept me on track, which I loved, right? Like you just said, no, just take a breather, take a couple of breaths, like,
Yeah.
you held me accountable. And I think sometimes what happens is when the grief gets so big and so overwhelming, we push it. We push it away. We like,
Yes.
I can't do this.
Yes.
And I think it's really important for all of us to know that when we push past that and we share that, not only are we freeing ourselves of that, but we're giving other people who read it the opportunity to open their book
Yes.
and to really explore it in all its nuances and essence. And that's what I love, like the responses that I got from some of the ladies, that when they read it, it was just like, thank you, it was a thank you.
Yeah.
And that was huge for me.
Oh, oh, okay, I got the shivers. That's beautiful. That's, I mean, writing our stories are definitely two parts. We're writing it for ourselves for whatever reason that is, insight,
Absolutely.
healing, whatever that might be. But then we're also writing it for that person who needs to hear it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
for
for
sure
your
we are.
sons.
Yes, absolutely. For my
Yes.
sons, for my granddaughters,
Yes.
it's the kind of vulnerability that the world tells us to hide,
Yes.
and that we armored ourselves to be so that you don't see those components of us, but really those are the best parts of us.
Yeah,
Don't
they
you
are.
think? Like when we experience such utter brokenness, but we're standing here in our own, that's it's because of those things. It's
Yes.
because we've surpassed them in some way. And I want I hope that for every single person, because the world is it's craziness out there.
It is crazy out there.
Right? It's total
It
craziness.
it
And
is, yeah. Well,
we need,
imagine your grandparents and parents, and that was craziness what you went through. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And I guess every generation has craziness in the world that we have to deal with.
yeah, we
Yeah,
do.
we do.
We do. Every
So what
generation. And I think That's why, like, the same way that we can carry trauma from previous generations, we can
Yes.
also carry hope,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
we can give that through these little gems, through stories, through art of some form of creative way of expressing the rawness that we all have within us.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and that rawness is our hearts and our
Yes.
souls on a plate or in our hands. And
Yeah.
when we share that, we give, like, I hope that I have ended the generational trauma of my forefathers and my grandmothers and my mom, and so that my granddaughters don't have to carry that anymore.
Yes.
That's what I want them to be
Yeah.
free of. They should know it.
Yes.
It's not that they shouldn't know. They need to know it.
Yes.
They need to understand it.
Yes.
But they don't need to be it.
No, and when we don't talk about these things, then there's shame that comes along with that. A family shame with the secrecy. I just want to
Yes.
mention a brief thing that's happened in my life. So I wrote my true life story. My mom had her issues, quite serious issues. But when I wrote my story, I have six stepsisters, and one of my stepsisters bought the book and she read it, and then she contacted me and she said, "Why didn't I know about this about mom?" And it kind of hit me, and I'm like, "Well, I don't know why you didn't know." And then I realized, well, it's because you were younger and it was one of those taboos. Nobody talked about it. And she said to
Mm,
me, "I thought she hated me."
wow.
And I said, "She didn't hate you, she hated herself, but she never hated
Mm,
you." That's
mm,
generational trauma. That's not
yes.
talking about it. That's keeping those secrets that don't need to
Mm,
be kept secrets because we don't know how other people are being affected. My
mm,
stepsister's in her early 50s. To
wow.
think that she went through, and that's the first time she's ever said that. So all these years she felt unloved, but it had
Mm,
nothing to do with her. It had
yeah.
to do with this trauma over here that she couldn't get over. So I just love and honor you so much for what you have just done by getting the courage and writing this. And as you say, your granddaughters, your boys are gonna, we don't know what they're feeling.
Mm.
So it's so good to be open and share that so everybody can understand and put it to bed and realize, okay, this didn't really have anything to do with me, or
It didn't really have anything to do with me. It affected me, but it didn't have anything to do with me.
that's right.
And people are allowed their emotion, right? Like,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So what do you hope, well, I think we've kind of talked about this, but I'm going to ask anyway. What do you hope women have to that who have gone through displacement, fear, separation, or silence can take from your story?
Hope.
Mm.
Hope. Um, you are not the pieces of your past. You are the pieces of your past, but you get to reframe it in any way that you want today. How you live today is your choice, and you get to change the perspective of the narrative that you've been dished out, or that you even have convinced yourself of. And so rather than being a victim, you can be a survivor. And it's very different from being a
Wow.
victim to being a survivor. A survivor is someone who goes past it
Yeah.
and does what it takes to put the victimhood to rest. And we steer our own ships. We do. We have
Yeah.
capacity to do it. It seems sometimes impossible and it seems so hard, but we absolutely can do it. And if anything, I would hope I hope that the readers leave with a sense of introspection of their own stories and the fact that they can get through it, that they
Mhm.
can come out the other side, so much bigger and stronger than they have put themselves into, if they
Mhm.
have.
Wow. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I just like, for so many years I kept myself quiet until I couldn't, and then I'd rage. And it affected my children, it affected my relationships, it affected me the most. And learning to put that down and to not being a victim anymore, but actually saying and realizing I have survived this. I have actually survived this, and I can continue to survive it with grace and with love and with light within me. And so I've chosen that. And when the feelings come up, I allow them to, right?
Yes.
Because they're part of who I am.
Yeah.
But I find positive ways to release that feeling. So if it is rage that I am feeling, I sit with it and I ask it, what are we raging? Why are we so angry? And I've learned to sit with it, and I think it's important that if it's that, I like the reader needs to take with them whatever they feel will empower them.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, I could just sit here and listen to you. You are so inspiring. I just appreciate you so much, Z, for being willing to do this and to work through the initial fear and anxiety and reliving what you were writing about. I just I really I appreciate you so much for doing this. Any last words to our oh just before I say that, I just want you all to know that I will have some information where you can find Z in the show notes, and I'm going to have the link to our book as well if you want to read her story, but also the other. I think we've got 11
I
amazing
love it.
stories in the book. So, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you're in chapter 2. Let me just look here.
Chapter 3.
You're in chapter 3, Between
Yeah.
Two Borders. Wow, such an impactful and powerful story. So back to my question. Is there anything you'd
Yes.
like to
Thank
leave
you.
our audience with before we close?
So much. Um, just stand in your power, in your truth.
Mm,
Don't be afraid to be who you are, because you're created out of magic and dust and light and love. And be the impossible.
yeah. Aw.
Mm.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening to this episode of Women Like Me Stories in Business. It was a very special one for me to do, and I hope to see you all when we do our next one. So take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Right. Thank you.